Hello, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, How to Drive Learning ROI by Engaging the CARES Framework. I'm David Wentworth. I'm the Principal Learning Analyst here at Brandon Hall Group, and I'll be kicking things off for us today. Let's start with some introductions. Our presenters today are Treion Muller, the modern learning architect and trusted advisor and consultant for ELB Learning. With 20 years of experience leading, innovating, and learning in this space, Treion helps organizations achieve desired change and measurable business results. He is the creator of the Learning Architecture Blueprint tool, the ARC, and is a regular speaker at L&D conferences. We're also joined by Richard Vass, Vice President of Learning Solutions at ELB Learning. Rich is a dynamic experience consultant and professional facilitator with over 25 years in the field of human performance and development. At ELB Learning, he has forged relationships with leaders in the field of professional learning services and has provided significant contributions to an impressive list of clients. In 2008, Richard was recognized by the Association of Talent Development, also known as ATD, as a certified professional in learning and performance. I, of course, would like to extend a thank you to ELB Learning for sponsoring today's webinar. ELB Learning is a one-stop shop for creating and delivering better learning experiences. They offer the most comprehensive suite of products and services to help conquer your training challenges. Their products include tools for building learning games, virtual reality training, e-learning courses, and video-based practice, as well as an LXP and LMS. They also offer learning strategy services, custom learning development, and staff augmentation. For those of you who maybe aren't familiar with Brandon Hall Group, we are a research and analyst firm that empowers excellence in organizations around the world through our research and tools. A quick mention that we currently have several certification programs open for enrollment, including Certified Learning Strategist Program. Please visit certification.brandonhall.com to learn more about how to earn that designation. And of course, your participation in our surveys is one of the most crucial components to our research. So if you have a few minutes to spare and see any topics that you might be able to take a survey for, it's greatly appreciated. Links will be available in the handout, and you can always visit brandonhall.com. All survey participants receive a piece of complimentary research once those results are analyzed. And then finally, with a few logistics for today's webinar. To ask questions, we please ask that you use the questions panel on your control bar. Today's presentation is also being recorded, so we will share a link to the recording and a PDF of the presentation via email in about 24 hours after the webinar. And if you'd like to download a copy of today's presentation instantly, the link to do so will be available in the chat momentarily. Speaking of chat, it is open for today, so we invite you to join in the discussion. You can share your thoughts with each other, with us. I'll be keeping an eye on both of the chat and the questions as they come in today to include everybody as part of the dialogue today. So please use those tools as you see fit to join in the conversation. And without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Treion, and he can dive right in.
Thank you, David, and happy holidays, everyone. It's great to be with you here and to have Rich as my sidekick, my friend, my colleague, and very experienced and talented individual, as you'll hear from him coming up soon. Today, we're talking about a 3-letter acronym that is sometimes a 4-letter word, ROI. And it's a big thing. It's something we've been talking about in this industry for a while. It is something that is kind of a misnomer in many cases, and we sometimes call things ROI when they are not. But today we're going to tackle this, and I'm sharing with you just an image of my upcoming book, The Rise of Mutant Learner, How to Learn and Lead in the Digital Age. And I'm doing this because the principles I'll be sharing with you, especially the CARES Learning Effectiveness Framework, is something that I outline in more detail in the book. So you're welcome to scan the QR code to find out more details when it's coming out in January or any other information related to it. Selfless plug, sorry. So the 3 key takeaways that I want to talk about today is, first of all, I'm hoping that you will be able to reevaluate what you think about what you think you know about your learners. Okay, that's important because sometimes we make assumptions that are incorrect. Secondly, I want you to rethink what we do in the space between where our learners are and where they need to be. And then we'll spend most of our time on number 3, which is redesigning our learning experiences with this CARES Learning Effectiveness Framework in mind, so that we can, in fact, impact business results and return on investment. Now, I'm giving David and Rich complete authority here and permission to interrupt. As you guys writing in chat questions, or you have any concerns or comments you want to make, I'm having these guys to interrupt me and we can go from there. We will have a very cool role play experience. We will involve one of you later on in a role play where we go through the CARES framework with you, but also we'll have time at the end for some Q&A. So I just want to give that as a heads up. So without further ado, we'll just jump in. So remember, I mentioned the 3 things we want to accomplish today. We want to talk about how we think that we need to reevaluate how we think about our learners. And that's because I believe our learners are mutant learners, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the space between, and then of course the framework, the CARES Learning Effectiveness Framework. So first of all, pop culture has done us a disservice. When you look at pop culture, often people look at the term mutation, they see it as a bad thing. And I want to make it very clear that if you look at all the synonyms and the actual science behind what mutation is, it's something that is very positive, and it's something we all want to, those of us that are surviving in this world are actually always mutating. We are adapting, we're modifying, we're creating deviations, we are innovating, we are metamorphosizing, which that's not a real word, but I like it. We're transforming and we're changing. And that's something we sometimes call it in our industry, adaptation, right? Or change. So it is something that I'm using the term on purpose because I want to get people's attention and to realize how we mutate from individual to individual is very different, especially as it comes to how we process and learn and change. So here's some things just to consider before we dive in a little more detail. Signs you are a mutant learner. So you make time to learn, check all the boxes that apply, by the way. You make time to learn even though you're busy and overwhelmed. And it might be in small bite-sized pieces, but you do it. You're not a clone, meaning the way you like to learn is not like anyone else. You want an answer now, even if it isn't a complete one. You want learning to be concise. This is that bite-sized micro-learning approach. You want the experience to look and feel good. Say thank you to all the social media apps and very high-quality websites nowadays that make it so that if we see something that's kind of 20 years old and looks crap, we don't want to be there anymore. So we just have been conditioned. We kind of divas in that way. And you don't want any extras. That's part of going with, you want an answer. You just want the answer. You want all the cheese and fluff, all the extra stuff around that. You love to be entertained. Again, thanks to Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, we've really changed how we consume information and what we like with that information. And you want to choose your own learning adventure. This is important. Nowadays, we can do that. And you will continue to adapt and change how you learn as time goes on. Now, we sometimes think when we in the industry, when we create a learning experience or training, we think, oh, guess what? We're going to create it for our salespeople, for example, and they're going to be focused on that learning and development experience. Here's the reality, though, and I think we all can relate to this. It's nothing new. You know this is happening. Yes, your learning and development experience is there, but along with it is everything else vying for their time. It's a world of distraction. It's a world of noise. It's a world of technology. And we have to not fight it. We need to embrace it. And also understand this is the world of mutant learners. How we do this is very different. We really do consume and learn in bite sizes in the seams of the day, in the flow of work. So what's the ultimate purpose of learning or training? If I were to ask anyone this, you'd probably give me some kind of a definition like this. It's to take your learners, whoever they may be, in regards to their skills, their behaviors, their proficiencies, from where they are now to where they need to be to do their jobs better. And here again, I'm making the link. And ultimately, you would like to show how they positively impact business results so that you can say, oh, here's the ROI. So that, my friends, I'm calling the space between. What we do as an industry, as learning and development professionals, is we take our learners from A to B, the space between. So the question I'm asking you is, what's the best way to teach, train, test, and try your unique learner? They're all different. And that's where we earn our money, right? That's where we, those of us that are professionals in the space, this is where we do what we do. So over the years, I've been researching this, and I have, as of 2022, you see I have the date there because this will change. I've identified 10 core approaches that we use to learning. Now, sometimes it could be more than one, so it's a blended approach, but typically we will default to one or more of these approaches to fill the space in between where our learners are and where we want them to be. We will use these approaches, these learning approaches, to get them there. And you can see it's things that you know, in-person instructor-led training, right? That's one. Live online instruction. This is webinars, thanks to COVID, has taken off. It's what we're doing today. Asynchronous online. Self-paced has been around for a while. Obviously, video-based learning is also asynchronous, but it's a different type of approach. And sometimes people lean on that, even though it's also asynchronous. It's not your traditional click-through. Micro-learning also could be asynchronous, but it's a different approach. Spaced reinforcement. This is something that I actually really enjoy. I like providing bite sizes for people over time. Gamification is a new approach. And then I call it AI version 1, which is adaptive learning. This is where we do branching and scenarios, and based on what I choose, it'll lead me down a different track. Then we have virtual reality, augmented reality. And then number 10 is AI, or true artificial intelligence version 2.0. We're not really there yet for the most part when it comes to learning. We are there with technology in other industries, but when it comes to actually anticipating, true artificial intelligence is when technology can, based on previous interactions and time of day and needs, they can anticipate what you are wanting and provide that for you. So it is being done in some ways. Some people call, there's a difference, by the way, between true artificial intelligence and machine learning. Machine learning, we do fine. It's more of that adaptive, number 8 there, learning. So we have options in the space between. And what we do there really does depend on who our learners are and what their needs are. So we create these blended experience using various, iterations and blends and mixes of these approaches to create nowadays learning experiences. And, I've seen a lot of really good things happening there. The key I want to make here is don't default in that space between. This is very easy to do, meaning we think, for example, if it's going to be in person, we're going to have someone in for a full day or 2 or 3, and then we're just going to fire hose them. That's a default mentality. Why don't you just do a morning kickoff and then have them leave and then spend the next few weeks using some space learning, bite-sized learning. Maybe it's asynchronous and it's virtual. It's a mix of things. So just don't default because you've always done it that way. Build an experience that's ideal for your mutant learner. Remember who they are? They have lots of noise distractions. They have their day job. People don't like training. I don't like using the word training because it carries baggage with it, a lot of negative baggage. And if you just say, we're going to help develop you over the next few months, you know what? People want that. And especially if it doesn't interfere with their day job too much. So this is important to understand. We are all mutant learners. Well, some of us are zombies. I won't go into it now. There's 5 different types of learners. 4 of them are mutant and 1 is a zombie. You don't want to be a zombie. That's just someone who's just going through life, basically not desiring to learn and grow. I don't think that's anyone here. That's why you're joining the webinar. But what's important is there's different types of mutations and mutant learners. And as long as we create our learning experiences with these folks in mind and understand that they don't want just the default setting, a one-size-fits-all solution. They want the ability to customize their experience a little. Then we will have more success. So what can we do with this mutant learner and the space between them? Here's where we're going to spend most of the time today. Well, we can care, first of all, and that CARE is an acronym for the CARES Learning Effectiveness Framework. We'll talk about that. We can design effective experiences. We can align to business results and ROI, and we can proudly share our successes. My goal is to make you guys look like rock stars in front of your C-suite. I want to make sure that we change the paradigm when it comes to training as being something that's done on the side to check a box. I want to be able to show that those in the learning and development profession actually impact business results. And guess what? We can do that.
Treion, let me add to that if I can. I just want to make a comment.
Sure.
This slide right here, as Treion and I have worked together over the last couple of years, and we've known each other for 10 plus years, but and I followed several of Treion's books, but this particular one that he's writing now, and this whole concept around cares is something that we at ELB Learning are now including in our engagements with our clients. It comes from the roots of design thinking, which is deep empathy for the learner. The slide Treion showed about where is the learner really? Understanding this mutant learner in this current 2022 environment, the CARES model digs deeper and actually adds some definition around what should we be thinking about when we're having deep empathy for the learner. So some of you have heard this concept around design thinking. I think this model takes it even deeper.
Thank you, Rich. Yeah,
Sure.
you're right. I also have a product management background. And in product management, if you don't design or create products and test throughout the entire process and iterate, it's very agile with that end user in mind, then you're going to have a product that fails. So that same principle applies. We are all trying to create great user experiences or learner experiences. So thank you, Rich, for reminding me of that.
You bet. And I'll have some
thanks.
examples coming up here to as we get into the model to show how this might work in the real world. So hopefully you'll get some takeaways.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. We're excited for that. I am to show people exactly what you've done with some real clients using the different components of CARES. I want to thank David and the Brandon Hall group for sharing a report they did in 2020. It's called Measuring Learning's Impact. And one of the things that I discovered from that I loved was one of the biggest challenges to learning effectiveness is that people don't measure very effectively. They usually use smiley sheets and feedback right after an event, but they don't really show how it impacts progress over time. And so this is something that this model will address. I'm not going to go over this stuff with you. I just want you to keep in mind, and maybe that's something that we can provide to you guys this report from 2020. But for example, reasons for challenges with measuring learning effectiveness, here's some examples that most companies just don't have the proper metrics. They don't have the time or staff they think to actually take a look at those metrics, even if they had them. And they don't have the technology to support the top three. But we all know that without metrics, who cares? Like if you don't measure something, it's not going to, and you don't, even if you measure it, but don't analyze it, nothing's going to happen. So we want people to be very clear. So here's examples, by the way, of metrics you can use, which will link to business results and ROI, and that can make you rock stars. So here's some examples. So if you take a screenshot of this or get the report from Brandon Hall here, but completion rates, achieving business outcomes, compliance requirements, employee engagement's a big one, right? What are some of these things that you can link? And we'll talk about it in CARES. I have a tool that I'm going to share with you that will, at every step in the process, as you are building a new learning experience, I'm going to ask the question, what are some success metrics you can link this very small piece of information to, if appropriate? So as Rich was talking about a little earlier, the reason we want to engage the CARES Learning Effectiveness Framework is for these 5 main reasons. It harnesses the benefits of new technologies and innovations. If you're familiar with Kirkpatrick and you're familiar with Bloom or even David Merrill's, you know that these are folks that try to look at the effectiveness of learning experiences and training experiences and to show how you can move someone through these different levels, for example, or taxonomies. So what I'm doing is I'm drawing upon the human development theories out there that apply to efficacy when it comes to training. And number 3 applies to what Rich was saying. It's to keep the mutant learner at the center of the user experience, everything you do with them in mind. It also helps evaluate current learning experiences and offerings for efficacy. And it addresses reasons why so many people don't care about training in general. They don't like it. So here's the purpose of the CARES framework. It's to determine 3 things: how likely it is that a specific learning experience will get the desired change that you want. It'll avoid you wasting money or time on learning experiences that do not work, because we can very quickly ascertain the likelihood of them getting that change. And we can provide confidence to move ahead with learning experiences that will work. So you'll see on the left-hand side, the CARES acronym stands for, and in some cases, there's a word, there's more than one word that applies to that letter. For C, we have content. we have application and accountability. And that's important because I believe that you cannot get true application without accountability or true change unless you also build in accountability. R is to provide opportunities for people to reflect, create daily routines based on what they're learning, and to receive reinforcement of those principles learned over time. E is for evaluation, two types, from an individual to evaluate how they are progressing, and from the admin or you as an L&D professional who's creating the experience to find ways to evaluate the efficacy of the experience they are going through. And then we talk about socialization and sharing. In today's world of social media, this has never been more important. And we'll talk about how this applies to your learning experiences. But if you can create an environment, a culture where people socialize and share not only their successes, but their fails, imagine how much quicker we can get people from A to B. Because now we're talking, they don't have to make the same mistakes other people have made if they share failures. And we want to reward people for sharing that, not just successes. There are two different use cases, two ways that you can use this learning effectiveness framework. And one of them is to evaluate existing learning experiences. So we have an assessment we're going to go through with you on this. And two is to help you design and develop new learning experiences. And that will introduce a tool that you can use. So starting off, we're going to talk about existing learning experiences, right? So put that hat on, think of something that a learning experience that maybe needs a little work. And we're going to go through this experience using this assessment. It's about 5 minutes. If you did it by yourself, it'll take a little longer because we'll be talking through things with someone. It's about 15 questions and you get one report. And with that report, you get an overall CARE score. How likely is it that this existing learning experience will get the change you want from those learners? And also, it'll give you a breakdown of the scores by components. So you can see where you're weak and strong. So we need a brave volunteer. I'm going to open up the participant banner here. I would like someone who's willing to share a learning experience that you are responsible for that needs a little help. You know it needs help. You know it's weak. You know it is not getting the results you want. And then I want you to answer. We're going to actually open up your mic and have you share verbally and answer the questions that we have. These are very simple. You're going to answer from 1 through 5 in a Likert scale format, from strongly agree to strongly disagree. And we will tabulate. Rich is going to tabulate the score for us for each component and overall. And we're going to go from there. So I do need someone to volunteer. There's someone raised their hand. Who was the first person? Who was that? Tracy Chan. Is that you? I think you are the first person. So Alexa, thank you. Tracy, can you speak to us and let us, so we can see if we can hear you? I cannot hear you yet. So your mic should be open, Tracy.
Hey, it's Christy. Alexa, you might have to unmute her, I think.
Yep, so we went ahead and did that. Tracy, can you unmute yourself on your side? We can't hear you. Oh, we can hear you now.
Tracy, you there? Okay, we might, Tracy, I'll give you one more opportunity. I really would love, and by the way, whoever is this participant will get a copy of my book for free.
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
We can now. Yes.
Sweetening the pot with a free book. Free book on the line, Tracy.
Sounds good.
Okay, well, Tracy, first of all, tell us a little about yourself. Take just like 30 seconds. Tell us who you are, what your role is, and then give us the name of the course or learning experience you have in mind.
Well, my name's Tracy Chen. I manage the Learning and Development Department for Numeris, which is a Canadian-based data company that represents and provides data to our broadcasters, advertisers, and agencies within Canada. So I oversee all of our corporate training opportunities for our employees. And in terms of the first program that comes to mind is our Leader Connect program, which initially was brought together or put together for bringing leaders together in a social manner, but has evolved over the years to really help to build the knowledge, skills, and still add that social component for our leadership team. So I feel there's an opportunity potentially to maybe elevate the program and also be able to showcase the return on investment because it is a quarterly program that we offer to our leadership team. So I hope that helps provide enough information.
That's great. Tracy, you did a fantastic job. Thank you. And I appreciate you being brave enough to volunteer. And this is not that hard. I just want to, the best way to understand the CARES learning effectiveness framework and is to actually put someone through the framework using the assessment. So let's do that, Tracy, and tell me the name of this again. It's called the Leaders Connect.
Leader Connect, that's correct.
Leader Connect. Okay, so Rich, are you alert and ready to start capturing the responses from Tracy?
Yes, I am. I'm alert
Okay.
and ready.
Thank you. So
I've been
Tracy,
eating Christmas cookies all morning, so I'm.
well, hopefully you don't crash during this session. So Tracy, here we go. With the Leader Connect in mind, right? This course, the quarterly one that you do with leaders. Here's the first question. And I want you, this is you in first person, right? Tracy, you know the on-the-job realities, challenges, expectations, and goals of your target learner, leaders, I'm assuming, and how this learning experience will help them on their journey to desired change. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Strongly agree, 2, strongly agree.
I would say 2.
Okay. So here, ideally in a session where I would do a discovery session with someone where I'm as a modern learning architect, I'd obviously want to dig in a little deeper. We don't have the time necessary to do that today, but it's important to also understand the why you say number 2, but you say you disagree. Okay. It is a social experience, but you might not know all the leaders involved, right? They're on the job reality, challenges, expectations yet. So let's put down 2 and then just jump to number 2, question number 2. And Tracy, you have all the content you need or access to the subject matter expert for this course or learning experience.
I would say 4.
Nice. Okay, that makes sense since it's part of what you do. Number 3, the content in this learning experience is instructionally designed with my unique learner in mind, including using the right learning approaches, modalities, and activities.
I would say 3.
Okay. And you'll see with content, I'm being very broad with what I put in content, because to me, content is more than just the actual IP. It's also the instructional design. And the reason I put it under content is because think about it. We often instructionally design around content and we do a pretty decent job of it, but it's usually the event, it's the thing, it's the information that people are consuming, even if it's designed in a cool way, including practice. It's still part of the content experience. It by itself is not going to change anyone and get them to B. They're still part of A. They're learning what it is they need to learn in a cool way, sometimes with instructional design. Okay, so we have those numbers for C. So Rich, if you can tabulate C, don't tell us yet. Just keep C score.
I have it.
Well, let's not go there yet.
Okay.
So Tracy, let's go to A. And by the way, with this CARES learning effectiveness framework, you'll see on the left-hand side, what I'm putting out there and suggesting is that if you can put your learners for a specific course through as many of these CARES components as possible, you have a higher likelihood of getting them to the desired change you want, the goal that you want them to be able to do, or the skill proficiencies. So content, we have a score. Now we're going to A. Tracy, the learning experiences provides the learning experience, or Leader Connect, provides real-world application opportunities for your learners, your leaders.
I would say 3.
Thank you. The Leader Connect program tests the learner's proficiency of the skills that they learned in the program in real-world environments.
1.
Okay. By the way, that's very common. So you're not the only one that would mark 1 there. Because sometimes we build it one size fits all, right? The learning experience includes clearly defined accountability opportunities for your leaders to share their application attempts with peers, coaches, bosses, and or instructors.
1.
Okay, that is also common. Usually it's a one and done event, and there's not much accountability built in what they do with that stuff that they've learned. Thank you. So let's go to R. And here we're going to talk about reflection, reinforcement, and routine, daily routines or weekly routines. First of all, the learning experience or Leader Connect includes time for learners to reflect on how they are doing with the new skills that they are learning and how it relates to their specific responsibilities.
2.
Okay. The Leader Connect program provides your leaders with examples and application opportunities to create daily and weekly on-the-job routines using the new skills they've learned.
3.
Okay. And what I mean by that, for just to elaborate a little bit for everyone, sometimes we teach a great principle, but people don't know then how to apply it in their life, in their real world or real work environment. So sometimes you want to provide to say, oh, here's this principle, which is really cool. It's out there. It's at a 10,000 level. But how can I apply it on a daily basis for me? In your case, you're talking about leader connection, right? Leader skill sets. And so we want to be able to say, okay, here's some examples of things you can do. And then how would you do it? And then share that with the group. So 3. Then we have after the initial sharing of the necessary content. This is what I call the event, right? The one and done typically experience. Learners receive intentional reinforcement triggers of the principles learned and over a spaced period of time.
1.
Okay.
This is not looking good.
Well, remember, I asked for one that needed work, right? This is not you saying this is my flagship best program out there, Tracy. And this is no indictment on you. This is why I asked for an experience that needs work. Okay.
Okay.
So you are not alone in these scores, just so you know. Now we might get some better scores in some ways. We're going to jump to E, or valuation. The learning experience includes opportunities for the learner to track and evaluate their progress and improvement over the duration of the entire experience. Now, if yours is a one and done, you might have some form of evaluation for their progress during that experience. But you tell me, what would you mark for this one?
I would say 2.
Okay. And then 11, the learning experience includes opportunities for you. This is you, Tracy, not the learner, the admin, to evaluate the efficacy of the learning experience, not just after the initial content sharing component, but also throughout the experience, if there is more of an experience besides the initial event.
3.
Yeah, most people have some kind of a feedback form, right, that they use. Okay. And then 12, you have a clear process and calendared evaluation meetings. This is you again, Tracy, you and your team, in place to review the efficacy of this learning experience over time.
3.
Okay, thank you. And then let's jump to, oopsie daisies, socialization and sharing, the S. The last 3 questions. In Leader Connect, your leaders can socialize best practices, tips, and other positive insights with the community, cohort, or peer group.
They can social. I would say 3. They can. Do they? No.
Okay. Well, then 3 is probably the right score. And I think part of the reason for that, and if we went into it, is because this is a one and done event, right? There's not a lot of opportunities for them to do it over time, probably. In the learning experience, learners can socialize. This is now the negative side of things. They can socialize watchouts, failed attempts, and associated lessons learned with a community, cohort, or group. So if 13 is the positive things, they can socialize things that they've learned, good things that happen. 14 is more of, well, here's some things that didn't work for me, failed attempts, and other negative things that might have happened with me trying.
I'd probably get that feedback more often, so I'm going to say 4. for that one.
Nice. I'm happy to hear that, by the way, because I love, well, depends on how you say it. Sometimes people are more likely to give negative feedback just because we focus on the negative. But if it's, as long as they're also providing the lessons learned from it, if it's just negative feedback, I hated the course, well, tell me why, what would you do differently? That's a different question, right?
Right.
So would you still keep it at 4?
I would keep it at 4. That's correct.
Fantastic. Thank you. That means you have some proactive and constructive feedback. And then lastly, in the learning experience, past experience participants, so past leaders who've gone through this course and who have mastered the skills can be engaged as peer mentors and or coaches for the current learners.
4.
Oh, nice. And by the way, that doesn't always work. So in some instances, the learning experience we are talking about might not facilitate or require that. So I'm glad that you're doing it though. So that always helps. So you see what I'm doing. I've worked you through for your Leader Connect course, the components of the CARES model, because it helps you think differently about the course. And based on my research, and I've been in this space 20 years, I have a master's degree and I'm working on my PhD in instructional technology and learning science. So I'm pulling from the Blooms and the Kirkpatricks and the Merrills and the Vygotskys and you name it, the researchers in the space. And I've created what I feel is a succinct framework that if we can build learning experiences with this in mind and walk them through all these components, the more we can include all these components and get better scores on, the higher the chance is that we'll have better results, business results, as well as other metrics that we can use to show the efficacy of the program. So let's see what your score is overall. Do you have the overall score for us, Rich?
Yes, I do. The overall score is 39.
Whoopsie daisy. Okay, 39 out of 75. Okay, so you're kind of in the middle of the pack there. It's not, and the lowest score you can get is 15, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 components, and the lowest score you would get on each of the questions would be 1. So 15, you have 39. It's not as bad as it could be. So you're kind of in the middle of the road there. And what is your content score, Rich?
Content score was 9.
That's not bad. But just so you know, content is something we as an industry do pretty good at. I want you to think of Masterclass, you know, the very high quality Hollywood quality video, that program. Masterclass is a company that will have like directors of movies or basketball stars, and they will come in and share best practices. So the content there, I would give definitely, in most cases, it's like, yeah, it's very high. When we get to A, things change a little because we want people to apply this, not just learn about it, right? And this is, again, where we get to different levels with Kirkpatrick or the different taxonomies for Blooms. So with A, what was Tracy's score?
On A, it was her lowest. She got a 5.
A 5. So the lowest you can get in A is 3. So Tracy, that, by the way, this is where a lot of people fall short, because they might have you call it an application checklist, or you call it an action plan. So you teach in C the information, and then you give someone a handbook and say, okay, now go and change the world. Here's your action plan. And how many people do that? Well, they get back to their day job and they didn't do anything. So that's not surprising. This is probably the area where people fall apart the most when you're evaluating the efficacy of your program or learning experience. How about R?
R was 6.
Okay, also low. But that's also normal because we're talking about, remember, reflection. This is relevant reflection to me as a learner. It's also, how do I apply these principles in a daily routine that'll work for me? And then it's reinforcement over time of principles that are important for me to not only learn initially, but remember over time. So that's also normal, Tracy. So again, we're not judging you. We are saying, how can we improve this program? So how about E? I'm assuming this is the highest score.
Actually, socialization. And
Oh, that's
sharing
right.
was
That's
highest.
right. It was.
I just want to say something about routines. That are, as a manager and leader over many years, as many of you have been, a good routine is like a coaching session or a month-end review. that's a routine where you could apply new skills for how to handle conflict or whatever, and I'm just thinking of the Leader Connect program, but a routine is important. When can I use this next? But anyway, in the E, she scored an 8.
Nice. Okay, that's not bad. And I think one thing I found, and the Brandon Hall group has I think I mentioned earlier, their report from 2020 called Measuring Learning Impact. They talk about this, and when it comes to evaluation, some of the reasons that companies give for not doing a good job evaluating for efficacy is that they just don't have enough time or people. That's one of the top criteria there. And then how about S, the highest score? What
S was highest at 11, which I thought was impressive.
That is impressive, and it makes sense, Tracy, with a course named Leader Connect. It would make sense because that's what you want to do. So tell us a little more why you think that's so high, Tracy.
Well, it creates an opportunity. We create an environment where leaders can come together in a community type environment. And with our strategy around being a people first centered organization, this really does ring true. So as much as we may not get the feedback or the information that's being shared may not be easy for us to see that it's being applied, we know that folks have the opportunity to come together, whether it's highlighting new people or new leaders that are introduced to the community of Leader Connect. It's being able to have folks share tips and tricks with one another within the session. Being able to connect them in that way initially then leads to additional relationships that actually spill over into other programs that are running very well for us internally.
Oh, I love that. And, so if you look at the model here, and there's no one right way to do this, by the way, because your end learner and the topic of your content and what it is you're trying to have people learn to do is different. So everyone's different. What I'm saying is, if you keep these components in mind as you are building a learning experience, we're going to go to that next, right? Or even if you take an assessment of the current one, like we just did with Tracy, and you see, well, we're really low at A. What can we do to improve application and accountability in this course? And then R, we were low in 2. How can we do this over time and create more of this, build upon the positive stuff in S, the socialization and sharing, but do it in a different way so that it encapsulates more of a change process over time. So that's what I would, talk about, Tracy, doing with you. If I were to talk to you on a one-on-one basis and consult with you, is talk about how can we break this down? And actually, that brings up the next step. So thank you, Tracy, for participating and being our role model.
Oh, not a problem. You're welcome. It was an awesome activity to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's make sure we grab Tracy's at least her email address if we can.
Get your book.
Maybe Christy, you could grab it, or somebody, so we can get her the book.
Yeah, absolutely, Tracy. I guess, I guess Alexa will probably send me, it's Tracy Chen. I'm gonna write it down. So
Awesome.
Thank you.
I think it's coming out next month, right, Treion? You'll have it.
Yeah, next month.
Okay, before you stop sharing, Treion, I want you to showcase this one because we're going to do some real life examples here. It is almost 16 minutes till the top of the hour. I'm going to take about 6 to 7 minutes here just to showcase real examples. I hate showing up and throwing up, like, look at all this cool stuff. We do it too much, and I really want to focus on giving Treion the time, but I want to show a couple of quick examples of how we do this in real time. So this first one, Treion, I'm just going to Slack it to you. Imagine, guys, that you've done a training session for warehouse leaders on things to watch out for, emergency situations, and you showed them video, and you had them do a worksheet, and there's classroom stuff that's going on. How do you ensure application and accountability? Well, here's one example. Treion, I'm going to Slack you this link.
You're going to Slack me this, and you want me to?
Yeah, if you'll click it and just showcase it to the team. Here we go.
Can you guys see my screen?
The WebGL always dogs my system. So go ahead and click play. This is a scenario VR example built using eLearning Brothers Scenario VR tool. Notice that's a 360 image. Listen, I hear an alarm and I see a light flashing. So I'm going to go up the ladder and oh boy, there's an issue with the boil tank. You have 30 seconds, the timer in the lower right. What should I do? Now, Treion, as you're like looking at it, you have to think, okay, should I push a button first? Should I click something first? Maybe I should push that button first. There's different options here. You're going to get feedback as you move along. And then maybe try one of the green buttons or try to turn down the temperature. The alarm was on the first one, so maybe click that one and maybe the top link. Oh, we went down, oh, we failed. We got to try it again. So let me, you can stop sharing there, Treion.
Okay.
The scenario VR, and I tell everyone, if you're waiting for virtual reality to become more affordable, to get to the point where you can use it, well, I tell everyone it's here now with a tool like Scenario VR, which was first to market, by the way, in terms of how easy it is. But look at this back end. So this is the Scenario VR analytics on the back end. So that was the Power Station e-learning demonstration. Because I'm tracking how long did it take somebody to make their decisions, I could come in here and click time spent. Well, they were at the guard shack, then they went up to the turbine deck. They were there for 5 seconds. How many users have I got in here that I can do a check on? Did they score? What were the interactions they clicked on? How many things did they click in correctly on the turbine deck? So I'm now learning and can see where they are in terms of what choices they're making. That is an XAPI backend. So if we're using XAPI, I think that helps a ton. Here's another example, our PayPal client. We've done a lot of work with PayPal over many years. We're teaching leaders how to handle priorities. As a leader, you need to be focused on our products, our priorities, and our people. So this is the priorities module. As a leader, you need to understand how to prioritize different requests that might come in from our team. So we've done a whole e-learning here on this. We've come to the point where you're now going to apply. So I'm a big fan of applying in the classroom as you can. Obviously, outside the classroom is awesome, and we want to track that, but we don't always get a chance to see that, right? We're not going to be over their shoulder all the time. So in this case, we tell the learner, okay, it's your turn to practice. We're going to set up this activity. You're going to meet your team. Here's your team members. They're going to come to you with some suggestions. Now, keep in mind, they've already been through about 20 minutes of this learning. They understand how to prioritize things. Now they're going to practice it. All right, here we go. You're going to be given a certain number of resources across the 4 categories you just learned about: risk, time, money, and headcount. By the way, those were the topics. That was the content. If we're looking at the CARES model, the content was, what is risk? What is time? What do we mean by money? What do we mean by headcount? In this exercise, you're getting 15 of each. It's just a point value. So obviously there's not always going to be a number allocated with any of that, but we're now going to take the time to say, all right, now let's take the time to have you determine how you're going to go about handling requests that are coming from your team and how you're going to prioritize things. So let's start with Michael. Michael steps forward and says, hey, I have an idea for how we can help PayPal grow our sellers. If we do this, and there's audio running here, he's explaining something that could be done in Latin America, and it would require this, that, and the other. Well, should we do this? It's going to require this here. Should I approve it or deny it? Well, based on the priorities and what he's talking about, I'm going to go ahead and approve that particular project. So I click approve and I click submit. I get a little bit of feedback. All right, does this help in terms of where we're headed? Now I go to the next one and so on. And I won't show it all to you because we just don't have time. But I prioritize several of these. And then at the end of the quarter, I see how I did. That's real-time feedback that's happening with an application exercise that's done right inside of the learning. As you can see, my timer is running down as I move along. So that's the A, application and accountability. How can we do that better in e-learning? There's a way to do that we don't always think about. I want to move to reflection now, if I could. Just real quickly, you probably have seen this wheel already. One of the tools that we've recently brought on board is rehearsal. And some of you may have already seen this. Some of you may already be using this. I'm going to go ahead and maximize this. This is a 1-minute video. I'm just going to let it run. Imagine, let me kill the audio. Imagine a situation where you can teach some concepts, some soft skills to your learning audience, and then you can showcase it. You can demonstrate how to do it correctly. And then you can send it out to your whole team all across the country, globally, domestically, wherever they are. Meet them where they are. They get the assignment from you, and then you practice on your own. It's like a role play, but you're doing it on your own. So now we're getting into reflection and reinforcement and routines. I can drop this, what I'm learning here, right into my existing daily working job. So I get a chance to reflect on how I want to go about it. I can re-record myself many times, and I finally submit it. I record my best solution. I send it up to the boss. It gets socialized with the team, and I get feedback on that. And then I'm ready to, in this case, it's a sales pitch. But what an amazing way to do exactly that in a reflection, routines, and reinforcement type of a way. So one more. Treion, do I have time for one more?
You know what?
Or do you have plenty more to share?
Well,
you only got 10 minutes.
yeah, I would like to open up for everyone to ask questions if possible.
Okay, well, let me just show this last one then. This is our LMS. You guys probably are using an LMS. Everybody has an LMS. We got courses in here, everything you want to be able to do. The boards event here, when we talk about socializing and sharing. So hopefully you all have something like this in your LMS. Let's say I'm enrolled here. I take a course and I love it on conflict management skills. I can come over here and say, all right, I'm going to put up a board on conflict management because I just did that. And then I'm going to share this board with the rest of the team. And I'm going to find people. In this case, I don't have any users, but I'm going to find users to share it with. And then we're going to collaborate on my ideas regarding that particular topic. So you probably are doing that already internally. If you're not, there's so many easy ways to do it now. Hopefully there's, at least something on the radar screen for the new year to put something like that in place.
Yeah.
And there's so
Thank
much
you.
more. I can just take over this call, but I don't want to.
So
what you're sharing is great, Treion.
well, what I'm loving about this, and I've been reading the chat, your comments, and thank you guys for your feedback and questions. What I'm loving about what we just did is and I've been a practitioner in this world and a researcher, and sometimes those two roles butt heads. I'm trying to bridge the gap. And that's what I've been able to do with this CARES framework, is to say, yes, there's so much good research on how to get change in human beings, especially when it comes to the corporate environment. But how does that apply to real world? And so luckily I've had roles like Chief Product Officer and Chief E-Learning Architect and Chief Strategy Officer to help actually test these things. So I love my partnership with ELB. So I'm a consultant with them and help them with their strategies with clients to not only say, yeah, he has a good idea on architecting a solution for you that works, but here's some cool tools. And so I'm not going to go into this, but I want to share with you that I do have an ARC. So if you want to design and develop a new learning experience or revamp one of the ones that you have now because it's not very effective, well, I have a tool called the ARC, right? The Architecture Blueprint tool. And what I do here, if you look closely, you'll see there's 3 buckets. There's a content breakdown. This is a micro-learning approach. I believe in taking your content as is or building it from scratch with micro-learning principles in mind or micro modules in mind. And then you run it through each line, each principle that can stand on its own, right? The value to that is that you can move things around. And then you find the right learning experience or modality that would work best for that principle to teach that. And then you attach it to the CARES framework and say, well, which one of the CARES components did we apply to that one principle? Because that's important to see at the end, to see how diverse of an experience you've created for your mutant learner. And then you lastly want to make sure that you, if applicable, you want to link as many of those micro modules to success metrics as possible, because that's where you start seeing the magic happen. And by the way, in the report from Brandon Hall Group, they talk about this as one of the keys to getting success when it comes to measuring efficacy, is to do it from the beginning, to link as you're building your training to what are the business metrics, or I call them success metrics, from the beginning, that you can start saying to your decision makers, the C-suite, oh, look, we are tying this course, this learning experience to these metrics, and here's how we measure them. So I'm not going to go into much detail, but this tool takes the complexity that sometimes people think about instructional design. This is an instructional design tool, and actually helps you to break down and build a training experience with not only CARES in mind, but best practice instructional design in mind, and success metrics for business results and ROI. So these were the goals today. Obviously, there's only an hour. We have so much to cover. I would love to have your questions. You'll see my contact information down below. You can scan the code for the book, but now's your time. We do have 5 minutes. So David, I'm going to leave it up to you or Alexa. Let me know what questions we have and I'll try to answer them.
Sure thing. I mean, you guys did a really great job of sort of talking through everything as we were going, and you know, the participation from Tracy was really answered a lot of the questions. And I see that's you've got a link in, if you haven't already added a link to the ARC tool in the chat, since they can't they're saying that they don't, the link that's available doesn't work. But Max was asking, and you know, I don't know how deep you want to go into this, Treion, but how did you come up with the CARES model? I mean, I'm you know, listening to you, obviously you've done a lot of research and discussions with organizations over time, but you know, what's the genesis?
So the great question. This is an organic process over the last 15 years. So I've worked with companies like Franklin Covey, Crucial Conversations, Muller Group. I've been responsible for creating learning experiences that are client-facing, that are internal-facing. I've worked with clients to architect solutions so that they can get their employees to a stage of proficiency that they can do their jobs well and impact business results. And throughout the last 15 years, we've been part of what I call it's a learning explosion, which is a learning lens on this digital revolution we're in. I mean, if you think about it, just 12 years ago, most of us didn't have smartphones. It's only since in that small time frame that our worlds have changed. We really now have access to so much information in our pockets and purses. But what I've realized is we have to start, it started with the 3 topics I had in the presentation, to think of our learners differently. We are being changed, conditioned. We have been given opportunities to learn in different ways, more so than ever in the history of the world. And so this process hasn't been like, oh, one day I sat down and said, let me look at what, there's a CARES framework that just manifests itself. I've been testing different components, like what is good instructional design in sharing of information? That's C. What's breaking down between that and what people are actually doing? That's A and R. Then are we evaluating that? That's E. And then what's the key to making it all work? That really is socialization and sharing. Stephen Covey, in his book, The 7 Habits, talks about the principle of teach to learn. And I've looked at that and I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense. If you want to learn something really well and internalize it, you have to teach other people about it. So that's where the socialization sharing came to mind, because nowadays we don't have one sage on the stage. We have the community is the new expert. And if you can tap into the individuals and experts in the community, not only wins what worked for them, but what didn't work for them, then we can learn at a much more rapid pace. So the answer is, I've been working on this for 15 years, and I'm finally ready to share it with the world. We will share links to the ARC, maybe as a follow-up. And I'll work with Christy on that, as well as any information you guys have related to the CARES model.
Great. That's great. I appreciate you walking through all that. So we did have a question from Kevin. Which part of this framework would you advise a company to strive for? You know, you have the scores. Which one do you think is most important to get the highest rating, right? A 15 out of 15 if possible.
Kevin, it really does depend. It depends on what you're trying to do, who your learners are, what is the change you want in them, how does it align to success metrics, business ROI. I would suggest where things fall apart the most of the time is you have great content, and you even have great instructionally designed experiences where people go through it and they get to practice and there's role play, and then they go to work and they don't do anything. So to me, where things really fall apart is the A and the R.
Got it. Yeah, and I think, you know, that's the key too, is not just focusing in one area, right? You sort of want to try to improve across the board as much as possible. And remembering that almost anything you do like this, it's all incremental, right? It's a journey. You're not going to suddenly go from wherever you are today to 15s across the board in one go. So definitely important to focus in different areas. So I appreciate that. We did hit the top of the hour, getting a lot of great feedback. People really enjoyed, walking through this, and obviously thank you, Tracy, for your participation and really showing how this works. So great. So just thanks for everyone for your interactivity and your questions and your comments and the chat that was going on with each other. I think a lot of people have learned quite a bit from each other in the audience as well. And Treion and Richard, thank you so much for sharing your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Happy holidays.